Just the thought of someone taking someone else's life is completely unimaginable and spine-chilling. However, nothing is as terrifying as seeing innocent young children turn into murderers. From time to time, the unthinkable has happened. Children have decided to murder members of their own family, in spite of their seemingly normal upbringing. Others do so because their upbringing was far from normal, involving beatings and abuse. Then there are misguided children who have a desire to kill, then go on murder sprees ending the lives of purely innocent victims. Children are supposed to be innocent and pure, yet every year many commit horrific crimes. Here are some of the evilest children in history. Number 10. Bryan Freeman was aged 17 and David Freeman aged 16. Both of them had shaved and tattooed their heads as a symbol of their neo-Nazi beliefs. They were immediate suspects when their parents and younger brother were found beaten to death in their Salisbury Township, PA home. The boys had been terrorizing the family and as a whole the town. As the police told it, the triple murder uncovered in Salisbury Township, PA that week was every parent's nightmare. The ghastly culmination of a long-running battle of wills between Brenda and Dennis Freeman and their loutish, hulking sons, Bryan, 17, and David, 16. Number 9. In 1964, Edmund Kemper was just 15 years old. He shot his grandparents, killing them both. He had been planning his repulsive act for some time and had no regrets whatsoever. The California Youth Authority detained him in a juvenile hall so that they could put him through a rigorous series of tests administered by a psychiatrist. Because the results suggested that he was a paranoid psychotic, he was sent to Atascadero State Hospital for treatment. There he learned what others thought about his crime and worked hard to make his doctors believe that he had recovered. Although he was considered a psychopath, he worked in a psychology lab to help administer the tests to others. In the process, he learned a lot about other defiant offenders. Kemper was released after another 5 years and remained under the supervision of the Youth Authority. His doctors recommended that he not be returned to his mother's care, but the Youth Authority ignored this. Kemper went on to murder and dismembered 8 women over the next 5 years. These same doctors affirmed his insanity defense. In fact, even as he was carrying parts of his victims around, a panel of psychiatrists judged him to be no threat to society. Number 8. In 1998, 14-year-old Joshua Phillips beat his 8-year-old neighbour Maddie to death and hid her body beneath his bed. 7 days later, his mother noticed something leaking from beneath the bed. Joshua claimed that he'd accidentally hit Maddie in the eye with his baseball bat, causing her to scream. In his panic, he dragged her to his home, where he hit her again and then stabbed her 11 times. His story failed to convince a Florida jury, who convicted him of first-degree murder. His mother is still appealing his conviction based upon the fact that he was given an adult penalty for his crime. Number 7. Willie Mosket was born on the 9th of December 1962. He was a convicted murderer whose crimes committed while he was still a minor led to a change in New York state law so that juveniles as young as 13 could be tried in adult court for murder and would face the same penalties. On the 19th of March 1978, Willie Mosket, then 15 years old, shot dead Noel Perez on the New York subway during an attempt to steal some money and a watch. 8 days later, Mosket shot another man, Moses Perez, no relation to his first victim, in another botched robbery attempt. Mosket was tried and convicted of the murders in the New York City Family Court, where he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, which was the maximum for a minor. The short length of Mosket's sentence caused a public outcry and led the New York State legislature to pass the Juvenile Offender Act of 1978. Under this act, children as young as 13 years old could be tried in an adult court for crimes such as murder and receive the same penalties as adults. New York was the first state to enact a law of this nature. Many other legislators have since followed suit. Mosket was eventually released from prison, but has subsequently been convicted of a number of other felonies, for which he has received a number of life sentences. He is currently in the New York prison system in solitary confinement. Number 6. On the morning of Saturday, the 11th of January 1992, Indiana resident Don Foley and his brother Ralph decided to do some quail hunting in a nearby Jefferson County forest. Just 1 mile into their trip, as Don turned onto Lemon Road, Ralph spotted a strange object just a few feet from the road in a barren soybean field. At once it appeared to them that it might be a body, but the form was so badly burned and scarred that it looked to them to be a doll. Upon closer investigation, it became painfully obvious that it was not a doll. When investigations began, it turned out to be the body of Shanda Shara, who would later be found the victim of a jealous lesbian love triangle. Her body prior to the murder had been slashed and stabbed to death, and eventually resulting from torture. Lori Tackett was ultimately implicated along with Tony Lawrence and Hope Rippey. Mary Lorene Tackett was born the 5th of October 1974 in Madison, Indiana. Her mother was a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian, and her father was a factory worker with 2 felony convictions and prison stints in the 1960s. Tackett claimed she was molested at least twice as a child at ages 5 and 12.
5.
On Monday the 29th of January 1979, Brenda Ann Spencer, who was 16 years old, used a rifle to wound 8 children and 1 police officer at Cleveland Elementary School in San Diego, and to kill Principal Burton Ragg and custodian Mike Sucher. The school was across the street from her house. She used the rifle she had recently been given for Christmas by her father. When the 6-hour incident ended and the pretty teenager was asked why she had committed the crime, she shrugged and replied, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." She also said, "I had no reason for it, and it was just a lot of fun. It was just like shooting ducks in a pond, and the children looked like a herd of cows standing around. It was really easy pickings." Her lack of remorse and inability to provide a serious explanation for her actions when captured inspired the song "I Don't Like Mondays" by the Boomtown Rats, written by socialist musician Bob Geldof. Her quote, "I don't like Mondays," also appears written on a wall in the movie The Breakfast Club.
4.
Robert Thompson and John Venables, who were both just 10 years old, had been stealing things all day at a shopping centre. They stole candy, a troll doll, some batteries, a can of blue paint and other items. Why did they decide to steal 2-year-old James Bolger? Was it a plot or a sudden overwhelming compulsion? Once they had him, they didn't know what to do with him. They could have easily discarded him, leaving him alone on a sidewalk by a shop where someone would discover the crime baby. But John and Robert, like children who would rather destroy their own possessions than give them to another, murdered the little boy. James's parents would never see their baby alive again. The video cameras at the mall caught several images of James Bolger in the hands of his killers, frozen in time. He was to be taken on a long aimless walk, cruelly tortured along the way. James was senselessly beaten to death by his 10-year-old captors, who carelessly abandoned him on the railroad tracks.
3.
Jesse Pomeroy was just 14 years old when he was arrested in 1874 for the horrific murder of a 4-year-old boy. He was quickly labelled the Boston Boy Fiend. His horrible trek had begun 3 years earlier with the sexual torture of 7 other boys. For those crimes, Pomeroy was sentenced to a children's reform school, but was released early. Not long after, he mutilated and killed a 10-year-old girl who came into his mother's store. A month later, he kidnapped 4-year-old Horace Mullen, took him to a swamp outside town, and slashed him so savagely with a knife that he nearly decapitated him. Because of his strange appearance, he had a milky white eye, and his previous strange behaviour, he was under suspicion. When he was shown the body and asked if he'd done it, he responded with, "I suppose I did." Then the girl was found buried in his mother's cellar, and he confessed to that murder as well. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Following a public outcry against condemning children to death, his sentence was commuted to 40 years of solitary confinement.
2.
Mary Bell was convicted of strangling a young boy, Martin Brown, on the 25th of May 1968, the day before her 11th birthday. She was, as far as anyone knows, alone on this occasion. On the 31st of July 1968, Mary and her friend Norma Bell, no relation to Mary, took part in the death, again by strangulation, of 3-year-old Bryan Howe. Police reports concluded that Mary Bell had gone back after killing him to carve an N into his stomach with a razor. This was then changed using the same razor but with a different hand to an M. Mary Bell also used a pair of scissors to cut off bits of Bryan Howe's hair and part of his genitals. As the girls were so young and their testimonies contradicted each other, it has never been entirely clear precisely what happened. Martin Brown's death was initially ruled an accident as there was no evidence of foul play. Eventually his death was linked with Bryan Howe's killing, and in August the two girls were charged with 2 counts of manslaughter. Mary was released in 1980 with court-ordered anonymity. In 2003 the courts awarded her and her daughter anonymity for life.
1.
At the age of just 14 years old, Michael Hernandez lured a young boy named Jamie Goff, aged 14, from his middle school into the bathroom and went on to stab him an unbelievable 40 times, resulting in the death of the young boy. After the stabbing, he calmly attended class. Upon further investigation, authorities found a list with the names of Hernandez's planned victims. His sister was on the list as well. Before he was sent to prison for life, teenager Michael Hernandez obsessed over horror movies, serial killers, and had detailed a plan to murder a classmate in a bathroom stall at his Palmetto Bay Middle School. He was given a life sentence in 2004, which the US Supreme Court mandated a review for recently.